Let me see. You're here. And you're here. Okay. Let's go to game study. I don't know if you have it open.
Yep, I have both open.
Yes. Okay. Let me see. I'm on chapter 9.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, this is a position. Well, we're going to see three diagrams from some of your games. All of them are from the Keres Memorial. I guess it's quite a recent tournament because, well, you showed me some of those games. You shared the link here on Lichess with me.
I think this was from summer.
Okay, so not that recent.
Well, August. Yeah, a few months ago. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to see three parts of those games and with a common theme. I'm not going to tell you what the theme is. I'm going to leave you with the position first, and then you will notice, I guess, pretty quickly what we are talking about here. I don't know if you remember what you played here as black.
I barely remember my opponent. I vaguely remember the opponent, and I can't remember the result of the game. I think I ended up losing this game, but okay, let me think. So I'm black.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you ended up losing this.
yeah.
You were quite better through all of the game, actually.
I actually don't remember this position. I'm trying to. Okay, and it's black to move.
Just to, well, maybe you don't remember what you played, but what would you play here as black if the game was having place now?
The first thing I was looking at was Rook A6, but then B3 seems. Sorry, no, he can't play B3. Yeah, so he could play B3. So I was looking at Rook A6, but then after B3, I wasn't sure of a follow up there. I hope in the game, I hope I didn't play E4.
You actually played F6.
I was just going to say another idea, possibly is B5 to just push that pawn, since we do have two rooks on the C file. So actually, B5 looks like it might be an idea. But then again, I guess we have E5 hanging, so we can't afford to do that. Okay, so sorry, you said I played.
You played F6 here.
Okay. Strengthening my light squares, right? No.
You had to do something about the pawn on E5.
Yeah.
You were right about that. The thing is, the position of your king is a big issue after you play F6. I mean, you're already having to spend a temp on defending this pawn on E5. And, well, that's not a good thing because it's an opposite castle position. You know this is a race. I mean, when the kings are castled in different wings, it's whoever strikes first, the one who usually wins. You're much better here in that aspect. I mean, if you take a look at your pieces, all of your pieces are doing something active on the queens. You can say the same about the white pieces. I mean, they are rather uncoordinated. White still has to spend quite a few tempi just to bring his pieces and create something. And as you said, I'm sorry, that was not the idea at all. Okay, let's see. You could have gone rook a6, and you're creating a threat of mating one in just one move. You're able to create threats immediately. White has this rook on e2 that just is completely out of the game. I mean, he should play rook e1 and then rook g1 just to bring the rook to the attack. You're quite ahead here in your attacking chances. The thing is, the pawn on e5 is actually hanging now, and you had to do something about it. You were right about that, but f6 is very weakening. Now you can have problems on this diagonal, the a2, g8 diagonal. You are right about g6. It's a big hole. All the white squares are a problem. The thing is, when you're going to make a move that actually weakens the position of your king, you need to ask yourself if it's absolutely necessary. Maybe it wasn't here. What alternatives can you think of to f6?
I was looking at bishop, like just now, I was looking at bishop d6, but I was a little worried about, I think we're weakening, like, I think d5 looks like it could be a target. So I was a little worried about that. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Looks like I could almost play bishop b4 to take here. Might be an idea. Possibly. I don't know.
Almost. Maybe. Maybe it's a bit early. I don't know, but it's an idea. Knight takes c5, maybe. I don't.
Maybe even bishop a6 or bishop a3, something to consider.
Yeah, the pawn is still hanging. I don't know if you.
Yeah, I keep forgetting.
There. But you actually can get away with defending that pawn and just continue your attack because of what we were saying. This piece is completely out of the game. He's not going to attack with that. It's true that he has the open G file. I think that's his only asset in this position. But still, even if you give him time to play rook G1, he still isn't creating any concrete threats. I don't think he can get away with spending too much time just to bring his pieces. I mean, he's going to get checkmated soon. As soon as you play rook a6, the threat is just too strong. He can't play a3 because you go bishop takes a3 and you open up his king completely. He's in a lot of trouble here. Bishop d6 was actually very fine. I'm glad you mentioned it. It's a way of defending the pawn on e5 without weakening anything. You're not compromising your position. This king is absolutely safe, and you can say the same. You can say the same about that king on a1. I mean, it's going to be threatened very soon, and there's not much white can do about it. All your pieces on the queen side are very active. You can go b5 after this, as you wanted to do initially, but now you don't have problems on e5. So b5, b4 is a very real possibility here. Rook a6 followed by b5 and b4 is also a threat. I put as an example a possible continuation. I think it's quite logical. Rook g1. And now you can go about just throwing everything at him with rook a6. And it's actually not that easy to defend.
So,
I mean, how would you defend?
Well, if we can go back, my main concern here with bishop d6 is I'm really concerned about.
What's this time?
Yeah, I'm concerned about that.
Okay. So let's go rook b2 maybe, because this rook isn't doing anything that great here, and this rook maybe you want it on the open file. So rook d2. I guess we can go rook a6 either way. How would you defend this? It's starting to get really scary.
I mean, the most natural move I'm looking at is b3.
Yeah, but it's hanging this pawn on c3.
I guess it is. Yeah. Okay. I didn't look at that. Yeah.
Every pawn move he makes is weakening
b5.
his king. But before also is well met by a very strong refutation.
Oh, we could just take it with the bishop. Okay.
Yeah. And then
I didn't see that we had an intersection here.
I'm sorry. Actually, before I'm just seeing that the rook is defended by the knight. So we go bishop takes, pawn takes, rook takes c2. White has b takes a5, and this rook is defended. I didn't see that. So that actually worked with the white rook on e2, because then you will go rook takes e2. Here it doesn't. But before looks like a very dangerous move. I mean, I don't believe it's going to work. Maybe queen b5 is already threatening bishop takes b4, and well, I don't think white can get away with this. It looks like too much. Rook d2, rook a6, maybe queen b3, defending a2, and
Yeah, and attacking d5
yeah,
again.
there's some kind of threat there. Maybe this works, I don't know, but rook c5, I guess, and then rook b5. Okay, that's a new problem for white. Now rook b5 is a very strong threat, because queen will no longer be able to defend that pawn on a2. It looks really bad for white, actually. A3 is met by rook b5, I guess, and then bishop takes a3 should be fine, should be winning. I don't think he has the time to just bring pieces and attack this pawn. But there's also another move that you mentioned. I'm sorry, we're going to go back a little. Bishop d6 was fine, but you mentioned that you didn't like e4. Why was that?
Well, I just thought we were creating holes. I thought it was, white has a really good outpost on d4. That he might be able to possibly play e5 in some cases. I guess in this case he can't take because we'll just recapture. I guess he could take back. Yeah. It just felt kind of weakening. It just felt like it was weakening the dark squares. We have less control over these dark squares, and we kind of create kind of a couple holes on these two squares here. It was just my gut reaction.
Yeah, if we take a look at the pawn structure and we think of it in kind of an abstract way, yeah, it feels wrong. I mean, this square on d4 is something we don't want to soften that much. The thing is, it has its virtues. I mean, this queen is not going to the king side anymore, so white's chances for counterattack are virtually over. This knight actually has no good squares at this point. If you go knight d4, which is the natural reaction, you're right, we can chop here, he takes d, and then you can go on with your plan. You play b5 here. Notice that the outpost, it isn't there anymore. We changed the bishop as soon as the knight landed there, and now there's not really a good way to meet b4, and it's kind of crashing. It might seem that black exchanged too many pieces, but you have to remember that you are a pawn up here. He sacrificed a pawn early on the opening. He played a very strange g4, and you just took without any fear of the G file, which was very correct. And now he's having a lot of trouble. He's not only a pawn down, but he's also facing a fierce attack. I did some analysis here. I ran a little bit of analysis. It looks like a3 maybe prevents everything, but black has a very strong answer here.
Well, just the first thing that I look at is rook takes c3, and then if b takes, rook takes again, because it looks like queen is going to be able to follow up by taking a3. So let me look. So if rook takes c3, b takes c3, rook takes c3 again, and then queen b2, we can still go rook check, and then we're going to pick up the queen. I don't know. It almost seems like it worked. Okay, let's see what else could white do. Rook takes b3. Sorry, rook takes c3, b takes c3, rook takes c3. It looks good to me, but we are giving up a full rook. Let's say queen. No, I don't know. It seems to work. Okay, let's say he goes queen d1, and then rook takes a3, king b1, and then we have rook a1. It seems to work.
Yeah, but I will go back to the first variation you said. Rook takes c3, b takes c3, rook takes c3, and queen b2.
Yeah, so there I was thinking rook takes a3.
Rook takes
oh,
a3.
And then king b1. No, yeah, king b1. Okay, king
has that.
And we can't go rook a1 because he'll just take it with the queen. Okay, let me take a look at that. So rook takes c3, b takes c3, queen b2, rook takes a3, king b1. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a problem because he's even threatening to play rook e3 and it's changed rooks.
What about rook a4?
Rook a4 there. Oh, okay.
Threatening rook b4.
I think rook e3 is kind of mandatory. I'm sorry, rook e3. The idea is to meet rook b4 with rook b3.
Yeah, it looks like our attack fizzled out.
Yeah, there are not enough.
Too bad. Okay, so something else then.
Yes, there's something simpler and well, clearly strong.
Okay, I'm looking at b4 now. Because neither pawn can take. I calculated that out. And then if black got two free moves, I guess he would probably take on. Hard to say. I'm thinking c3. Hard to say where we would like to take on c3 or a3 if black had two free moves.
Well, that's a party. I mean,
anyone. A good choice. Yeah.
Any of those pawns would be a disaster for white. I mean, it's a second pawn, and this king is going to die very soon. Yeah, this is the move we wanted to make in the first place. And it's always important to bear in mind that you have to take a look at the move you wanted to play in the first place and see if it works anyway. Maybe tactics support your intuition and before it's still playable. I mean, in this case, it's absolutely crashing. There's no way white is going to meet b takes c3, and well, if he goes c takes b4, rook takes c2, now the rook is threatened, so he can't take your queen. Yeah, b4 is crashing. So after b5 in this position, white is in a lot of trouble. I took a look at queen d2 also, but b4 is crashing again. If c takes b4, what would you play?
Just queen takes pawn. Yeah.
queen takes b4.
Yeah.
Spectacular and effective. You are still a pawn up. Now there are a lot of threats on the first rank, and I don't think there's a good response at this point. I mean, queen e3,
Yeah. No, black is
rook
way better. Yeah.
c2, and it's over soon.
Yeah.
You could go e4 in this position. Yeah, from a purely structural point of view, maybe you don't want to make that decision, but there are a lot of upside. There's a lot of upside to that move. This queen is completely deprived from getting to the king side, and you're playing alone here on the queen side. That's very important when you're on an opposite castle position. These kind of positions are virtually a race. Whoever gets there first usually wins.
Well, yeah, and I would say that probably 90 or 95% of my games are opposite side castling.
That's Sicilian.
Yeah.
That Najdorf.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important to bear in mind. I mean, if you can deprive him from his attack on the king side, it's pretty much over. This e4, I think it's even better than bishop d6, which I think is fine, and you still have a strong attack. But e4 is just too easy to handle. Rook a6 is coming, and there's not an easy way to defend a2. For example, knight d4, bishop takes. Well, knight d2 is another possibility, but it's very passive, and there's no way white is going to survive here after rook a6. Maybe he has to go queen b1, but that's very sad, and you have to be very, very happy with this result. You shouldn't remember. You shouldn't forget that you're pawn up. You're still pawn up, and you're attacking for free. So this is awesome for black. I mean, your principal, the main position mistake here was f6. White is not winning at all. I don't think he's even better here. The game is very complicated, but that's because you were really winning before this. And now you get into some sort of trouble. The game was very wild. There were a lot of turnarounds with chances for both sides. He eventually won, but I think the starting point of all of your problems was this f6, and that's what I wanted to talk about today, because I saw in many of your games that you make somewhat unnecessary moves like this, just leaving your king kind of open. It's a difficult matter to adjust, because immediately you don't see that there's anything really bad happening to your king, but in the long run, these weaknesses prove to be very, very bothersome. Here's another one of your games of the same tournament against Raymond Tagnin. You can see the moves. I'm sorry. No.
Yeah, I can see.
You can see the moves here?
Yes.
Well, I have it on high. The next moves.
Yeah, you do.
How can you see it?
I see two moves. Maybe if you annotate them, I can see them. I'm not sure.
This is very real. Because it. Okay. I put the comment before the move. And I can't hide it that way. I'm sorry. Okay. I didn't know.
I won't look. I saw the first move. That's all I saw.
That's a feature I didn't know about this. Well, in this position, you have some positional advantages, you could say, but there's still a lot going on. You have the open e5. You also have this bishop there. He doesn't have the light squared bishop, and that could be a problem. in the future if he wants to defend this pawn on e6 because it's backward on an open, semi-open file, and he might need that light squared bishop to defend this. So it might seem that white has everything going for him and that black is in trouble, but what do you see for black? What do you think of black's position? What can you say in his favor?
Well, generally, I would say that black has a bit of a stronger center. He also has two pieces developed as opposed to white having one. And he's got the open F file, and possibly he might be able to create some threats on the H2 square.
Awesome. Those are pretty much all the imbalances in the position. That's great. Yeah, very good analysis. Yeah, this center thing is going to be a recurring theme, and he needs to make some of those breaks. I mean, C5 or E5 are almost mandatory, and I guess those are his main goals. And you're right, he's also quite ahead on development. You still have a lot of work to do here. You need to get these pieces out. And also, there's not such an obvious square for this knight on b1, because if you go knight c3, that knight would be right, would be on a very bad square. I mean, this knight is very misplaced here. It doesn't go anywhere. It just bites on granite. So it's going to be very tough, a very tough mission to get all your pieces to good squares here. And black plan is quite straightforward. He's going to go c5 and then knight c6, and then he's going to put a lot of pressure on this pawn. And if you go d takes c5, he's going to go bishop takes c5, and with this bishop on c5 and this rook on f8, you're going to have a lot of trouble defending that pawn of f2. Maybe knight g4 also is going to be a problem. That's about the idea black should have in this position. He needs to make use of his central pawns, and he also needs to put additional pressure along the f file. Here you played f4, which is somewhat understandable because you want to get a stronger grip on e5, but it also is quite weakening. Again, the same thing, this king. I mean, there are no queens over the board. I mean, with the queens outside of the board, it might not seem that it's going to be a problem, but the king here is quite unsafe, especially because of this diagonal and the possibility of this knight going to g4. It also leaves a lot of very weak squares. Now this bishop is kind of trapped behind his own structure. So f4, maybe it has a lot of drawbacks, and there's not much upside for that move. I don't know if you thought about an alternative here, or what you were thinking when you played f4.
Well, it was definitely primarily to strengthen the center and combat a possible d5 push and limit the scope of his bishop. It was definitely to help support the center. That was what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's understandable and the explanation is reasonable, but yeah, you still have some priorities here you have to deal with. Maybe 92 was kind of reasonable. I don't know if you took a look at some developing moves here, or if e5 maybe annoyed you at this point.
I might have even just here, I might have just been concerned about e5 being pushed by black next move.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Yeah, it looks like that was the reason for f4. Yeah, you could have gone knight d2. If I don't think this is the best move here. It kind of liquidates the center, and you have this bishop pair. And now you are going to develop with
Yeah.
the gain of some tempo. This bishop has to move again, and now your pieces are just fine.
Yeah.
I guess you're fine here. You can even go c4 and try to open up the whole center for your bishop. I think you're already better here. Mainly because you get all your pieces out, you consolidate that bishop pair, and once you complete your development, you're not behind development anymore. Now you won a couple of tempi. Um, you're going to be better with that bishop pair if this happens.
you'll
Um,
you'll find that and often like Stockfish doesn't like it, but often in many of my games, and I definitely play this more than other people. I often play like f4 or like f5. I do that in a lot of my games. I notice, and Stockfish doesn't like it in most cases.
Yeah, it's something to take a look at. In the next game, something very similar happened. It's kind of a regularity. The problem is with the king, and this is what we were saying. When you play a move like f4, maybe you don't see that in a short span something terribly wrong is going to happen, but it's a permanent liability. I mean, this king is going to be permanently open. These squares around him, this diagonal, these are things that, well, they're not going away. So up until the last move of this game, this king is going to be very open. And it's kind of a permanent feature of the position. When you move the pawns that cover your king, there's kind of no way back. And maybe nothing wrong is going to happen now, but it will happen later. So maybe you can't explain that this move is really, really bad at this point. And maybe in some positions, you run it through the computer and the engine doesn't have a problem with it. Maybe it says, it's fine, it's like any other move, but you have to consider the horizon effect. uh, I mean, the depth to which the engine sees the future moves is, of course, limited. It can take into account the possibility that this king is going to be weak in 20 moves from now. We as humans know that if we make a decision like this, we can have a lot of trouble later in the game. Here, the case is a lot more dramatic because he can take advantage of this immediately. uh, it's not it's not really that far in the future. Um, I'm sorry, just to take a look at the more well-founded line with 92. Maybe Black has to go c5 and try to make use of his pawn center. Um, But here, at least you're finishing development. I mean, after d takes c5, bishop takes c5, knight b3, bishop b6, and well, it's kind of balanced. You have the bishop pair, that's a good thing. Black has these central pawns, but he can't just push them like nothing is happening because they might become weak. Maybe you can go c4 here right now. I don't know, maybe h3 first.
I'm also wondering
H3.
about possibly c3 because it reminds me of the French Tarrasch. It looks very similar to like a French Tarrasch, the pawn structure and the bishop here and the knight here. Because I think often if Black pushes in that opening, you just sit the bishop back and.
Yeah, the thing is, there are no queens here.
Yeah,
So
that's what I was thinking. I was thinking the only difference is that there's no queens, so maybe the attack on the king side might not be as strong as it would otherwise be.
yeah, and this isolated pawn is going to suffer very quickly. After c3, for example, I don't know if c takes d or knight c6, which one is better, but let's say he takes this, he takes d, knight c6. Well, it's a problem. a permanent one. These isolated pawns are not such a big deal when there are queens and there are attacking chances, but here we are almost in an end game, so this is going to be a very big problem. You have to go, I guess, knight f3. Maybe these two cancel it out each other. I don't know, but the pawn on d4 seems much more easier to attack. I don't know, maybe rook ac8 is already threatening knight b4. I would take black here, and this pawn is just too exposed, and it's very difficult to defend. That's one of the problems you're faced with after black plays c5. You have two very difficult options. If you take, the bishop comes to c5, and with this rook on f8, you're going to suffer because of the combined action of the two pieces on the pawn of f2. And if you don't take, you're going to be left with a very weak pawn on d4, so there's no way around this. After c5, well, now the thing is, you're better developed to deal with this. This is a very complicated position. Now you can say who's better here. He has to be careful to just push the pawns, because maybe these pawns are going to be a bit weak if he just goes about pushing them recklessly. So maybe he has to finish development, and it looks pretty balanced. I mean, I don't know who I would prefer, whose pieces I would prefer to be leading here, but it looks fine for both of you. But yeah, you had to complete development, and especially to avoid weakening your king so much. He played really well here. He went for c5, and yeah, now you played c3, and you're going to be left with this weakness, with a lot of weak squares. I mean, your c3 is perfectly understandable. It was very, very scary to take on c5 at this point. Well, this king is not having a great time after something like knight c6, knight b4 is coming, knight g4 is coming. I mean, this is nothing to smile about with white. Now you'd rather have this pawn on f2, not on f4. Your king would be much safer. After c3, well, he went for knight c6, which is fine. And now you change your mind and play d takes c5. Now it's not logical, because you might have wanted to play something more useful than this c3. But yeah, the pressure on d4 was too strong. I mean, it's difficult decision after difficult decision at this point, just because of this positional mistake. This is how positional mistakes also make you play bad moves afterwards, because there are no really good moves. I mean, maybe you can play more precisely here or there, but there are no good choices. Now it's pretty much forced. After king h1, well, there were lots of emotions in this game. I wanted to concentrate on this point. He could have gone knight g4 now, and knight f2 is pretty much crashing. I mean, there's no good way to face it. You have to take this bishop on d3 out, because knight f2 is winning it. So something like bishop e2, knight f2 check, king g1 looks scary, but there's no discover that wins a lot of material. You can win a pawn, and it should be enough. I mean, the pawn on f4, ironically, or not so much, is falling. Well, black is really ahead here. I mean, you haven't even taken this knight out, his piece are active, and of course, I'm sorry, he has this extra pawn. It might be winning at this point, I guess. So again, the start of all your concerns was this f4. It wasn't necessary. You had more, let's say, urgent things to do here. You had to take your pieces out. And the third and last example of this kind is your game against Navid Samiev. I don't know how it's pronounced. um, well, sorry, I don't know. I know why. Again, I made the comment before the move. I would try to avoid this in the future. Let me see. Yeah, it's set on the option of hiding next move, but that's a problem. I didn't. I put the comment before the move, so you went for f5 here. Quite bold.
Yeah. I told you I play that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here it's maybe even more unnecessary. Nothing was calling for f5 here.
I think, yeah, and I think this was from the same tournament. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 3 games were from the Cross
okay.
Memorial.
Yeah.
Well, what was your idea when you played f5 here?
I'm trying to remember. I remember going over the game with Navid after it finished, and we analyzed it together. I remember he was 1200 in this tournament, and then I think he placed first in the tournament, and 2 tournaments later he's like 1800. He gained like 600 points in 2 tournaments. Yeah. I keep playing. I play them when they're like 1200 or 1000, and then okay. So yeah, I think I was just trying to get some aggression going, and hoping to free up my rook, and I think it was just a pure aggressive move. That's one of the main reasons I often play like f4 or f5. I like having my rook open. I feel like it's a good way to attack.
Yeah, the thing is, you have to consider the attacking possibilities, of course, but also the downside of a pawn move like this. Maybe, again, nothing immediately wrong is going to happen to you, but there are a lot of problems already. I mean, e6 is a target, d5 maybe. Your king is kind of wide open, and maybe that's not enough for white to immediately take advantage of. But this kind of moves also deprive you from flexibility. I mean, this is something that is not very frequently mentioned in the books, but when you make this kind of commitments, when you make a pawn move like this, the problem is that your whole structure loses some flexibility. If you now want to play e6, for example, to prevent this knight on c3 from coming to d5, then you're filled with holes. I mean, this pawn on d6 is a problem. The same pawn on e6 is going to be troublesome because this pawn is already on f5 and not on f7, from where it would defend this pawn on e6. And so after you make this move f5, you deprive yourself from moving your pawns further. I mean, some moves that you would make normally, just like this e6, for example, when this knight comes to d5, and now you can't make them as easily. And any remaining pawn you want to move in front of your king is going to create just too many holes. For example, if you want to go h6 at some point, then your pawn on g6 will be weak because, again, this pawn on f5 is not on f7. And maybe at some point you will need to play h6. I don't know. Maybe you don't, but you're depriving yourself of a lot of flexibility from your pawn structure. And that's something that is not so often mentioned, but it's a big deal. After f5, you're weakening your king and you're depriving yourself from setting up a different configuration of pawns. It's a problem going ahead. In this position, well, f5 is not necessary. I mean, even if you open the f file, only your rook is on the king side, and white has a space advantage on center at this point. It's not like you're going to crush him on the king side or anything. When you're deciding where you want to play and where the position dictates that you should play, you have to take a look at your pawn structure. Always take a look at your pawn structure. Here we have that famous arrow we talked about when we saw some position with pawn chains. What does this suggest to you?
It's saying attack on the queen side.
Yeah, there's an arrow there.
Yeah.
There are a lot of indicators. I mean, here you have this possibility of breaking on b5. This bishop on g7 is a monster. I mean, you have control over this diagonal. So this bishop on g7 is going to be a huge asset for an attack on the queen side. And you also have a very firm control of this square on d4. If you land a knight here, it can't be pushed away because of these pawns. They are too advanced for that matter. And well, one of white's ideas in this position is to go bishop b3 and finally going for d4. And well, that pretty much cancels your domination of this square on d4. That's why black usually plays knight d4 as soon as white goes bishop b3, just to deprive him from breaking on the center. So your main plan here is to strengthen your control of the square on d4, and then yeah, you can go about pushing on your pawns on the queen side. And you have very reasonable play here. If you take a look at what white did, it's quite reasonable also, but he made a couple of well, kind of passive moves. Rook b1, h3 are maybe a little bit out of context here. And well, just to take advantage of the fact that you already played knight e8, maybe you could go knight c7 here. I don't know if you consider it.
Probably not, no.
It's kind of part of this maneuver, which is thematic. Knight e8, knight c7, knight e6, and yeah, knight d4. It seems like too much, but the position is close. I mean, the center is not going to blow up anytime soon. And if you get a film blockade here on this square, white's pieces are going to be all very limited. And then you're going to go b5, and you have an attack on the queen side. White's idea here usually is bishop b3, queen d2, knight h4, and throwing f4, f5, going for that attack. That's usually what white wants to do. But your plan is quite logical here. For example, well, I always put an example variation. You can't really know what white would play here, but bishop e3, knight e6, for example, queen d2, knight e d4, and then you're all set. You're going to play rook b8, b5, and you have a game. I mean, you're already attacking on the queen side. You're fine here. So f5 was kind of unnecessary. You could also go for rook b8 and follow it with b5 immediately. There's no problem with that. It's the logical way of developing your initiative on the queen side and taking advantage of the situation of this very strong bishop. After f5, well, it's anyone's game. And you have that problem here. He went for knight e5, which is... Well, what I like about this move is that it kind of highlights that it's not that easy to play e6 anymore, which would have been the case if this pawn were on f7. And that's very interesting. That's an interesting feature of what happens when you make weakening or unnecessary moves of the pawns in front of your king. Knight d5 wasn't the strongest way. Knight h4 was very strong actually. The explanation is that white wants to take on f5 and answer bishop takes f5 by exchanging the light square bishop. And the thing is that if you part with this bishop, you're going to have a lot of trouble. These squares are going to be very big hole if you exchange your light square bishop. That's an additional problem of this weakening. Now you don't have a very big margin to exchange this bishop on c8. You're going to have a lot of problems on the light squares if that happens. So you're pretty much forced to take, and then after knight takes c4, these squares are quite a big problem. You can also go to d4, that's true, but then that makes it easier for white to develop his initiative with b4. And again, these squares around your king are very weak. It's really a problem. Well, after knight d5, you went for knight c7, bishop e3, b5, e takes f5, bishop takes f5, and then, well, white played knight h4, bishop d7, and the game was very complicated. He should have gone for blowing up the center here with g4, bishop d7, and d4, because if the center opens up, if he gets to open up the center, then these squares are going to be very weak and very exposed. That was the right way to play, probably, especially after he didn't find the best move. Knight h4, which wasn't easy at all. But again, all the problems stem from this f5, which was kind of unnecessary at this point. Well, in all three games, we saw that you made similar mistakes in that aspect. And it's important to bear in mind that the first and foremost, the most important positional feature you have to take into account when you evaluate the position is the safety of the king. It might not seem like something is going on immediately. It might not seem that you're going to be punished, but it's a long-term problem. After you move the pawns in front of your king, you assume a very big commitment. You're saying that your king can practically defend it himself, and that's not usually the case. Okay, we can go to the other study. I don't know if you're in it.
Yep.
Yep. The game is Krasenko-Beliavsky.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Here there are no comments before the first move, so no
Okay.
problem. Okay, it's white to play. He played, incidentally, queen b3. It's not the only move, but he went that way. But what do you think about this position at this point? At least from a positional point of view.
Well, so we have same colored bishops, which leads me to think that it gives white some better. I think that suits white better if white is attacking. I don't think the two pawns, I don't think those two connected pawns are much of an issue. I think white can stop that. And white has a 5-pawn island on the queen side, which I'm thinking might become a problem after something like, e4 and then possibly e5, e4, e5 type of thing. And the white knight is really good. It seems like Black could possibly combat it with something like knight e7 or bishop. Sorry, knight d7 or bishop d6. But I think that might take some valuable time. I don't know. That's what I think.
Okay. So you are liking white prospects here?
Yeah, I think I would prefer white.
Okay, that's fine. Um, it's actually, well, there are things going on for both sides here too. It's true that this knight is, or at least looks quite threatening. White does have central majority. He can go for e4, establish a very strong center with pawns on e4 and d4. This is going to limit Black's final pieces somewhat. Uh, but what can you say? Let's play devil's advocate here. What do you say about Black? If you had to mention some quality of his position.
Well, I, I know I said I wasn't too scared of it, but I think it is probably Black's best asset here are those two connected pawns on the queen side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the pawn majority. I mean, in any end game, these pawns can create a pass pawn, um, and one that is far away from White's king, and that's an asset. I know it's long term, but it can be a problem for White in a not so distant future if we arrive at an end game. Um, there's another problem which is not so easily noticeable, uh, but it's the thing we were talking about actually. This is connected with what we saw from your games.
Well, then I would
What's
have to look at pawn, or holds in front of the king or pawn weaknesses around the king. So I'm looking at f3, but maybe f3 creates the weakness around e3. Um, there is also a hole on a3.
Yeah, there you go. This king is a bit more exposed than this one. White's king, well, he has moved both the G and F pawn in front of king. It might not seem like much, and it probably isn't, but with a long-term look, this is something to be concerned if you're white. Part of your plan, for example, we were talking about flexibility of the pawn structure and how when you move the pawns in front of your king, you lose some of this flexibility. If you go e4 now, your king is very, very exposed. So e4 is something that white has to carry out with a lot of care now. It's not actually so simple to just play it and well, just keep on pushing those pawns. It's not going to happen because the king of g1 is going to suffer a lot. Maybe if these pawns were still on f2 and g2, then you could go for e4. There wouldn't be so much trouble. But here, I'm sorry, after these 2 pawns are a bit advanced, then there's really difficult for white to keep pushing his pawns forward. And in the long term, and not so long term as we are going to see, this king is going to be a problem, especially as long as there are queens on the board. I mean, if white is able to actually exchange these queens, uh, the safety of the king isn't the problem anymore because, well, knight and a bishop are really not enough to create any threats. But as long as there are queens or there are heavy pieces over the board, uh, the safety of the king is a very important detail, especially in endgames with queens. The queens have a lot of room to make a lot of threats very quickly to penetrate the position. And even if nothing happens immediately, you're going to suffer with white here. And it's kind of what happened. I mean, the two of them are very, strong players. Krasenkov and Beliavsky are two super GMs, or at least they were at the time. Queen b3, and then immediately Black went for Queen c1. King f2, knight e5, and well, now there's something to think about. If Black is left alone, he's going to play b4, a5, and it's kind of a problem now because it's not easy to stay still as white, but you also have to have a lot of care if you're going to play e4. He actually went for it because he thought he couldn't just sit and wait around for Black to advance his pawns. So he played e4, and now well, Black made a very strong move. He could have gone back with his knight, but that was definitely not his idea when he played knight e5. It's kind of a strange move, but I will give you some time to find it.
Okay, I was just taking a look at f6. If f6, e takes, and then we take. If he takes again, we do have bishop c5, which looks interesting. Because you mentioned not moving the knight back, and I'm not sure where else we would. So I was just looking at that counterattacking idea.
Yeah, but this has the same problem we are talking about. Now your king is also, and that's no one's land at that point. You go f6 and your king is just as exposed as this one. I don't know, maybe in that case even knight g4 is a possibility. Knight d7. And then your knight is going to be attacked and you have problems on e6. So f6 is very, very weakening move.
Yeah, I guess I only looked at the scenario as if he took our knight. I didn't look if he just simply moved the knight back or moves
The
the
move
knight.
is very difficult to find. I guess when he played Queen c1 and knight d5, he already had the idea to play the next move. It's very strange, very strange looking, but very concrete. I'm going to go ahead and play it because
I won't find it.
It's very difficult. Queen a1.
Wow.
Kind of strange.
Yeah.
Thing is, now that this pawn is hanging and the
that's so weird. Yeah.
The thing is, Queen a1 is it's almost out of our vision range. It's just unthinkable. The thing is, if white goes e takes d4, queen takes d4 check, and well, if he moves the king, then queen takes e5, and you're pawn up, and this king is as vulnerable as
queen e3 and then bishop c5.
Yeah, exactly. This one is a very big blow. This knight is going to fall either way. Bishop c5 is great. Some nasty calculations on Black's part.
Yeah, exactly. From here, that's
c1,
yeah.
it's a monster. I mean, seeing it from Queen c1, which he had to see. I mean, if you play Queen c1, King e3, he went for this, and he already had thought of this. Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, knight c6 then, defending that pawn and trying to create some threats. White must think at this point that with this king so exposed, he needs to create some threats. He needs to try to pick up these pawns. But well, in practice, it's very difficult to handle this with white. Knight b6. Now this knight has a mission. He's going to c4, and it's a very big piece there. King e2. It might seem strange, but the thing is, this bishop was hanging, so he can just run and try to hide on the other side of the board. And on the other hand, if you go bishop c3 or something like that, then queen h1 is very strong. The queen switches to the other side, and now the king side is falling. So, well, after just a few natural moves, very natural moves, white is in a lot of trouble. King e2, h5 is looking for some vulnerable spots here after h4. Well, white understood that he just couldn't stand still and just wait for black to create more threats, so he went for knight b8, queen d4, knight takes a6, knight c4, and well, this is very unpleasant for white already. This king is just in the middle of crossfire. Knight c7, queen g1. That's the typical penetration of the queen once she has little room in these endgames with queens on the board. Once the queen gets to the 7th or the 8th rank, it's usually very annoying. Bishop f2, and well, according to some very lengthy analysis, here black makes kind of a mistake. I say kind of a mistake because he still has very, very good winning chances after this. He should have gone queen takes h2. This is rather anecdotal, but I have to show it. Queen takes b5, and now the idea was to play h4, which is very strong because this knight is falling. If you take g takes h4, then the knight is falling, and this knight is going to be defended by the queen on c7. So this is pretty much forced. And you're going at least to pick up a pawn in this endgame with 3 against 2.
Sorry, I'm just
again.
I just wanted to take a look.
Yeah.
Why doesn't white just take here?
Because this knight is hanging.
Oh, right. Yeah, right.
It's still under threat.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty much forced, but well, there are some variations, of course. But the thing is, apart from the advantage of a pawn, this king is still vulnerable. This king is still safe, and that's a very, very big difference in the quality of the respective positions. So well, queen takes a2 was, according to analysis, very strong. Queen g2, all of the same, creates a lot of trouble. Queen takes b5, knight d2, and well, here it's a matter of pure calculation. Now white should have taken on d2. I know it looks scary because this knight is still loose somewhat, but it looks like white will handle this kind of attack. It looks very scary, but this is not forced at all. Maybe there are other variations, but still, I mean, white is pawn up, but this king is always in trouble, and the pawns on the king side are falling, so this is very complicated and probably better for black still because of this king that is wandering around the board. But after knight d2, well, the last mistake was queen takes h5, but it's not a very unnatural mistake. I mean, once the king is so exposed, it's very difficult to play in practice. Then came bishop b4, and now queen f1 is a very big threat, and it actually can't be. Actually, there's nothing to do about it at this
I just
point.
wanted to jump in here. We're a few minutes over our allotted time, so if we want to maybe speed up the
this
end.
finishes almost immediately.
Okay.
Queen f1 followed by knight c4, and this bishop falling here on b2 is quite a big threat. So, well, white went for the desperate knight takes c6.
Hoping for a perpetual or something?
Yeah, he's going for a perpetual. Well, black didn't care at all. He played queen f1, king e3, knight c4 check, king f4, queen takes f4, and now he's a piece up, and the king is, well, he's not relieved. Queen b5, bishop d6 check, king g5, queen takes f3, and finally he resigned. It's over.
Yeah, there must have been.
King is still strong.
There must have been some time trouble at the end here for white to play on so long, I think.
Yeah. At this point, he was in pure desperation. The thing is, you take a look at this initial position, and there's not much going on.
I know when you. I regret my answer, because the whole theme of today was about kind of moving pawns in front of the king and weakening the pawn structure and the king. I should have totally guessed here that that would of course be the theme in this game. But as you say, it's a very subtle difference. Like it's not all the way to f4.
It's very interesting how in the long run it becomes a problem. And white didn't do anything very wrong here. Maybe he didn't make the precise moves, but he didn't hang up everything. But this is very difficult to play. Incredible how.
I did have one question for you.
Yes.
It won't let me move. Can you just go later in the game? It won't let me use the move.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I have to go.
Okay. It was. Oh, I need you to go further in. It only lets me go up to. Basically, when black played h5. Here I'm just. I mean. It just kind of seems counterintuitive. Everything you talked about, not moving trying to avoid creating these weaknesses, and then I'm just wondering why in this case it's okay to do this.
Yeah, well, it doesn't change the fact that this king is very well protected. It's a very valid question because h5 kind of softens up the pawn structure. I mean, okay, white is not attacking and he's not getting anything, but moving this pawn forward is kind of a weakening move. The thing is, it's weakness for weakness. I mean, he's going to play h4 and he's going to expose this king on e2 even further. I mean, we saw a variation in which he had this queen takes h2 and h4, and he was basically blowing up the whole king side. In that case, this pawn thrust actually worked. It's usually h5, h4 is kind of a standard maneuver to soften up the king side. It's a different ballgame when you play the g pawn of the f pawn. It's much more weakening playing g5 than h5, for example. Pawns directly in front of your king and going to the center are very problematic if you're going to push them forward.
And I guess the other thing too is when I played f5 and it's f5 and f4 in those games, but especially the f5, it's like you said, it wasn't necessary. Like I had other good options. Where
the position dictated other plans.
Yeah. And here, black has a plan with h4, h5. It's not just to blindly attack, right? He's got plans to, as you say, kind of weaken this pawn structure.
It's a very concrete idea. Yeah. exactly.
Okay.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed it, and well, it's something to take into account. The position of the king is something that you always have to be alert about. It's the key positional feature of any position. I mean, it's the first thing you have to take into account.
No, it was very useful because I definitely play F4, F5 a lot. So in like moving forward, I'm going to be a lot more careful and cognizant when doing so.
I kind of lost the audio there.
Oh, sorry.
You,
I was just saying that. Can you hear me okay now?
yeah, no, I
Yeah,
hear
I
you.
was just saying that it was very useful, the lesson, because I definitely play F4, F5 a lot. But moving forward, I'm going to be very cognizant about doing so. Like, I might still play it, but I need a very good reason, and I have to make
Yeah.
sure that, well, I can't move the pawn back, so it's a permanent change to the
Exactly.
pawn structure. So I have to be very careful if I'm going to play that in the future. I need a very good reason if I'm going to do it.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Great.
Okay. Well, yeah. Thank you
Well,
again.
Tyler, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you again, and I will see you next week. It'll be interesting to see the YouTube video of this and see if the audio levels have improved. Although I suspect they will be.
Yeah, I'll be waiting for it.
Okay. Thank you again,
Okay.
and I'll see you next week.
Thank you,
Okay,
Tyler. See
bye.
you.